In 1946, Attlee's government took a most monumental decision in recent history. Britain was to withdraw from India the following year. In just weeks, a hurried line drawn across maps by men who had never walked our fields tore apart homes, families, millennia of community. But the partition was not only the division of land, it was the tearing of flesh and soul. For many Indians, it was the birth of freedom. For millions of Hindus in what is now Pakistan, however, it was the end of everything they knew. Nearly 15 million people were uprooted in the greatest forced migration of the 20th century. From Punjab and Sindh alone, millions of Hindus and Sikhs were driven east. Trains began overflowing with refugees as they rolled towards the new India, sometimes arriving silently, full of corpses. The 1951 consensus shows that in Punjab alone, over 800,000 Hindus and Sikhs simply vanished from the records, either killed on the way or trapped behind forever. One survivor remembered, "We left with nothing but the clothes on our backs. Behind us were our homes. Ahead, only uncertainty." The death toll of partition remains contested. Estimates range from 200,000 to 2 million. In Rawalpindi, March 1947, between 2,000 and 7,000 Hindus and Sikhs were slaughtered, villages burned, and temples razed. In Gujarat, January 1948, over 1,300 Hindus and Sikhs were massacred, slaughtered. They were not random acts. They were part of a tide of targeted violence that made survival itself a desperate act. Much of this violence and brutality were orchestrated by the All India Muslim League that had been set up in 1906. The looting of shops, burning of Hindu properties, the desecration of temples and shrines escalated astronomically during the 1940s. Perhaps the most unspoken agony was the fate of Hindu women. Between 75,000 and 100,000 women, some historians say up to 125,000, were abducted and sold. As one account puts it, the kidnapping of young women was common. They were molested, passed on from man to man, bartered, and sold like cheap chattel. Women were tattooed with symbols of another faith, forced into marriage. Many, however, took their own lives rather than live in captivity. Even after the borders closed, the search for abducted women went on for years. Many were never found. A number of critics like J. Sai Deepak argue that Nehru's communist-inspired government, keen not to offend Muslim minorities who remained in India, said that Muslims suffered in equal numbers. It's a line that has been peddled for decades through the education system. But new lines of investigations by revisionist historians and critics like Sitaram Goel argue that this was a bold-faced lie. Whereas India proclaimed to be secular, not wanting to alienate minority groups, Pakistan publicly and almost immediately declared itself an Islamic state. Hindus who had found themselves targets of violence and killings suddenly felt alienated, alone, without any safety from law. They have found that the courts, the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive all turned a blind eye to the atrocities committed against them. It's a situation that continues today. The genocide of Hindus in both Pakistan and Bangladesh is something that is not spoken of. Picture a line of humanity stretching beyond the horizon, men, women, children walking under a pitiless sun, carts creaking under the sick and dying, endless columns of refugees moving towards the hope of safety. Partition is often told as the story of two nations being born, but for Hindu families of what became Pakistan, it was also the story of exile, loss, and the scars that time cannot erase. One survivor said, "Freedom came to us wrapped in the shroud of those we lost." Independence of India Day, we remember not to reopen wounds, but to ensure they are never forgotten.